Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak about a truth so simple, yet so transformative. Happiness is not something you chase in the future. It is something you cultivate in this very moment. Too often, we fall into the trap of thinking, I will be happy when I achieve that goal, when life becomes easier, when circumstances align perfectly. But life is happening now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this very instant, and if we postpone joy until everything is just right, we risk missing the richness of life entirely. Happiness is not a distant destination. It is a skill, a choice, and a practice that begins the moment we decide to embrace the present. Every minute of our lives is a gift, yet so many slip by unnoticed. We rush through our days, consumed by worry about the future or regret about the past, and in doing so, we forget to live. Consider this: the sun rises, the birds sing, the world continues to spin, and yet our minds are elsewhere, chasing thoughts, obligations, and imagined problems. The irony is that joy is always available, always here, but we miss it because we are not present. To enjoy every minute of life, we must first learn to anchor ourselves in the now. Awareness is the doorway to happiness, and silence is the key that opens it. When we pause, breathe, and truly notice life as it is, without judgment, without expectation, we begin to experience a joy that is not dependent on circumstance, approval, or achievement. Think about the moments when you have felt truly alive: a child's laughter, the taste of your favorite food, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the intimacy of a conversation with someone you love. These moments are not extraordinary, they are ordinary. Yet when observed with presence, they become profound. Happiness is not hidden in some distant success. It is woven into the texture of everyday life. Every step, every breath, every glance, and every heartbeat carries the potential for joy. To enjoy every minute is to recognize this potential and allow ourselves to inhabit it fully. But living in the moment requires courage. It requires us to release the illusions that have held us captive: the belief that life should unfold a certain way, the notion that we must control every outcome, the attachment to what we cannot change. Suffering comes not from life itself, but from resistance to life. Every disappointment, every frustration, every regret is amplified when we cling to the past or worry about the future. But the moment we accept reality as it is, the moment we stop fighting what we cannot control, freedom emerges. Freedom to feel, freedom to act, freedom to be alive. And in that freedom, happiness arises effortlessly. Discipline is another secret to true joy. It may seem paradoxical, but structure and self-mastery create freedom. The discipline to care for your body, to train your mind, to direct your attention, and to manage your habits allows you to live intentionally rather than reactively. A disciplined mind is not enslaved by distraction, craving, or fear. It is free to savor life fully, to choose gratitude over complaint, presence over preoccupation, and joy over postponement. Happiness is a skill, and like any skill, it requires practice. The more we cultivate awareness, gratitude, patience, and self-compassion, the more natural joy becomes, independent of circumstance. Detachment from what we cannot control is equally essential. Life is unpredictable, and trying to manipulate every outcome only creates tension, frustration, and suffering. The person who clings to control, who ties happiness to results, will always experience disappointment. The person who observes, accepts, and acts skillfully where possible, while releasing the rest, discovers a deeper sense of peace. By letting go of attachment to what cannot be changed, we create space for joy to enter. We become like a river flowing through life, flexible, resilient, and able to enjoy the journey rather than obsess over the destination. Silence and awareness reveal yet another layer of happiness. In moments of quiet, when we step away from distraction and busyness, we notice the subtleties of life, the rhythm of our breath, the sensation of our heartbeat, the richness of colors, the warmth of human connection. In awareness, the mind ceases its endless commentary, and we can simply experience life as it is. This presence cultivates gratitude, joy, and a profound sense of fulfillment. Happiness does not require more. It requires noticing what is already here and allowing ourselves to inhabit it fully. Happiness is also nurtured through perspective and intention. Life is not perfect. Challenges, failures, and pain are inevitable. But our response to these events determines whether we suffer or flourish. By cultivating perspective, reframing challenges, and choosing responses rooted in awareness, we strengthen resilience and create space for joy. By setting the intention to notice beauty, kindness, and abundance, we retrain our minds to see the world through a lens of appreciation rather than scarcity. Over time, this intentional practice becomes a habit, and happiness transforms from a fleeting emotion into a stable, enduring state of being. Most importantly, happiness is found in the act of being fully present, in choosing to inhabit this moment with awareness, gratitude, and love. It is not something to be earned, purchased, or achieved. It is here now, in the simple act of noticing life, breathing deeply, and allowing ourselves to feel the richness of being alive. Every minute offers a chance to experience wonder, connection, and joy. Every heartbeat is a reminder that life is not waiting for us to catch up. It is happening, and happiness is available to those who embrace it. So learn to enjoy every minute of your life. Pause, breathe, notice. Let go of resistance. Let go of attachment. Cultivate discipline, awareness, gratitude, and presence. Laugh freely, love openly, and find delight in the ordinary. Happiness is not a distant reward or a future achievement. It is a skill, a choice, and a way of living that is always available when we stop postponing it. Life is happening now, and joy is not something to wait for. It is something to practice, embrace, and live in every breath, every moment, and every experience. The present moment is the only place life happens, a truth that is often said lightly, but rarely understood deeply. Human beings have a remarkable capacity to dwell in the past, to replay events over and over in their minds, or to project endlessly into the future, imagining what might be, what could have been, or what should be. And yet, in all of this mental activity, life itself, the living experience of existence, slips through our fingers. The present is the only space in which reality unfolds. It is the only place where our senses engage with the world, where decisions are made, and where experiences are truly lived. To truly live is to be present, to inhabit the moment fully, and to let the awareness of now permeate every thought, every breath, and every action. When we reflect on our daily lives, we often notice how little of it is spent truly experiencing the moment. Even when we are physically present somewhere, our minds may be elsewhere, worrying about the future, regretting the past, or planning endlessly for events that have yet to occur. This constant mental wandering creates a life that is more imagined than experienced, more rehearsed than lived. For example, consider someone sitting at a family dinner. Their body may be at the table, but their mind might be on the work they left unfinished, the email they forgot to send, or the obligations waiting for them the next day. In that moment, they are missing the warmth of conversation, the aroma of the food, the laughter of children, or the comfort of a shared silence. The experience is slipping past them because they are not truly present. The irony of human consciousness is that while it allows us to learn from the past and prepare for the future, it also traps us in a constant cycle of distraction. Memories can be comforting or painful, and anticipation can motivate or terrify. Both of these, however, are only relevant when they guide us back to the present. If they dominate our thoughts, they prevent us from inhabiting the very reality that is occurring now. Life, in its raw and essential form, exists only in the present. The past is a construct of memory, and the future is a construct of imagination. Neither is real in the tangible, actionable sense. The only moment in which we can act, feel, sense, and experience is this very second, and yet it is so easy to overlook. When one begins to notice this pattern, the realization can be both sobering and liberating. Sobering because it exposes how often we miss life by being elsewhere in our minds, and liberating because it offers a simple remedy: presence. Presence does not require special tools, wealth, or knowledge. It requires attention, intention, and willingness. It requires the mind to step out of the endless loops of thought and enter into awareness of what is actually happening in real time. A present mind observes sensations, listens to sounds, feels textures, smells aromas, tastes the flavors of food, and witnesses emotions without judgment. It does not resist what is, it does not cling to what was or what might be. It simply notices, fully and without distraction. To cultivate presence is to cultivate life itself. The practice begins with small steps, often in the form of noticing the ordinary details of daily existence that we usually overlook. the feeling of air on the skin, the rhythm of one's breath, the sound of a bird, the texture of a cup in one's hands, the warmth of sunlight or the coolness of a breeze. These seemingly trivial experiences are, in fact, the substance of life, yet they are often ignored in our rush toward goals, appointments, and imagined futures. By grounding attention in the present, each moment becomes more vivid and real. Each interaction gains depth, each sensation becomes rich, and even routine activities acquire a certain vibrancy that was absent when they were merely performed on autopilot. Beyond sensory awareness, inhabiting the present also transforms our relationship with time and suffering. Anxiety about the future and regret over the past are both rooted in a refusal to accept the present moment as it is. Anxiety is a projection of fear into a future that does not yet exist, while regret is an attachment to a past that cannot be changed. Both are attempts to escape now, to avoid the immediacy of life as it is unfolding. By turning attention back to the present, one can confront and release these mental burdens. When fully present, fear loses its power, because the future is not yet real, and sorrow loses its sting, because the past is beyond our control. What remains is clarity, acceptance, and a capacity to act authentically in the only moment where action is possible. The present moment also reveals the interconnectedness of experience. When we are truly present, we notice the web of relationships, actions, and consequences that surround us. We see the subtle gestures of care from others, the minute changes in our environment, the fleeting beauty of ordinary life that we would otherwise overlook. This heightened awareness fosters gratitude, a deep appreciation for the now that is not contingent on external circumstances, but rooted in attention itself. Gratitude and presence are intimately linked, for when the mind is fully aware of what is, the heart naturally recognizes the value of what exists. Every simple action, breathing, walking, listening, speaking, becomes a source of connection and meaning. In addition, presence allows for deeper engagement with creativity, work, and personal growth. When the mind is anchored in the now, it operates with clarity and precision, free from the distortions of distraction. Thoughts flow more naturally, decisions become more thoughtful, and efforts become more deliberate. In creative endeavors, whether art, writing, music, or problem solving, being present allows one to tap into intuition, an insight that might be clouded by rumination or worry. In relationships, being fully present with another person fosters genuine connection, empathy, and understanding, as attention is the foundation of meaningful interaction. Life is richer, more vibrant, and more meaningful when lived in awareness of each moment, rather than as a series of abstract goals or fears. One of the most challenging aspects of presence is the recognition that being fully in the moment requires facing the totality of experience, including discomfort, boredom, and pain. The mind often resists these aspects, seeking to escape or numb them. Yet these very experiences are part of life, and to avoid them is to avoid life itself. Presence teaches us that even difficult moments are fleeting and valuable, and that resistance only amplifies suffering. When we allow ourselves to sit with discomfort without distraction, without judgment, and without trying to change it immediately, we discover that our capacity for resilience, insight, and joy expands. The present moment, in all its rawness, is sufficient. It does not require enhancement, avoidance, or embellishment. There is also a paradoxical freedom in fully inhabiting the present. Many believe that by constantly planning for the future or controlling outcomes, they gain security. In reality, the opposite is often true. Clinging to control breeds tension, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. The present moment, when embraced, provides a space where we can act effectively while remaining unattached to outcomes. This is not passivity. It is an active engagement with reality as it exists, informed by awareness and guided by choice rather than compulsion. To live in the present is to move with life rather than against it, to respond to circumstances with intelligence and compassion, rather than reacting automatically. Philosophical and spiritual traditions across cultures have long emphasized the centrality of presence. Mindfulness in Eastern traditions, existential awareness in Western thought, and countless meditative practices converge on the idea that life is found only where it is experienced in the now. These teachings suggest that happiness, peace, and meaning are not located in some distant goal or external condition, but emerge naturally when attention rests fully on the present. Awareness of the present transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, the mundane into the sacred, and the fleeting into the eternal. Every step, every breath, every glance becomes a meditation, a revelation, and a chance to inhabit life fully. Yet, even as we intellectually understand this truth, the practice of being present requires commitment, patience, and gentleness toward oneself. The mind wanders, it forgets. Even the most disciplined individuals find themselves caught in distraction, judgment, or longing. Awareness is not about perfection, it is about returning, moment after moment, to the simple fact that this is where life unfolds. Each time attention drifts, noticing and returning to now strengthens the capacity for presence, deepening one's engagement with life and revealing layers of beauty, richness, and meaning that were previously obscured by distraction. The more one inhabits the present, the more one realizes that the boundary between the self and the moment dissolves. Awareness does not merely observe life, it participates in it fully. Actions are more deliberate, sensations more vivid, and experiences more complete. Life ceases to be a string of events to endure or anticipate, and becomes an immersive flow in which each moment contains its own depth, significance, and joy. The present is where time becomes alive, where perception sharpens, where emotions are fully felt, and where choices are most genuine. This practice of presence extends to every aspect of life, the simplest daily routines, the most demanding challenges, the quietest moments of reflection, and the most intense encounters. When fully present, mundane activities become opportunities for mindfulness and appreciation. Hardships become lessons in resilience and patience. Fleeting joys become lasting imprints of gratitude. The present moment, therefore, is not just the location of life. It is the medium through which life is transformed, the canvas upon which the colors of existence are painted, and the lens through which the depth of experience is revealed. As human beings, we have been given this remarkable ability to notice, to reflect, to imagine, and to choose. This ability is most potent when it is anchored in the present moment. Past and future are tools for learning and planning, but they are not substitutes for now. To dwell in memory or anticipation is to trade reality for abstraction, to miss the vibrancy and richness that exists only in direct experience. The present moment is where laughter resonates, tears fall, love blooms, and thought clarifies. It is where understanding deepens, creativity flourishes, and relationships thrive. It is the only place where life is real, immediate, and undeniable. By cultivating presence, we learn to embrace each moment as it comes, neither clinging to it nor rejecting it, but fully inhabiting it. We begin to notice the extraordinary in the ordinary, to find meaning in simple acts, and to experience the depth of emotions without being overwhelmed. The present moment teaches patience, humility, and appreciation. It encourages us to slow down, to observe, and to participate consciously in the ongoing dance of existence. Through awareness, we realize that life is not a distant goal to reach, but a living experience to be felt, appreciated, and engaged with as it unfolds. Suffering is often seen as an inevitable part of life, as if it were the direct result of external events, circumstances, or other people's actions. Many believe that if the world were just, predictable, or easier, suffering would not exist. Yet a closer examination of human experience reveals a subtler truth. Suffering is not caused primarily by reality itself, but by the resistance we bring to it. Resistance takes many forms: denial, avoidance, judgment, anger, fear, and craving, and it amplifies ordinary difficulties into pain that seems unbearable. Life in its raw form contains challenges, discomforts, and losses, but these experiences only become suffering when the mind rejects or resists them, rather than allowing them to exist as they are. From the earliest moments of human life, resistance is a natural response. When a child falls and scrapes a knee, the instinct is to cry, to push away the pain, and to avoid similar situations in the future. These reactions are protective, designed to preserve safety. However, as the mind develops, resistance often extends beyond physical discomfort to the realms of thought and emotion. When reality does not conform to expectations, when plans fail, desires are frustrated, or losses occur, the mind reacts with tension, anxiety, or resentment. This resistance transforms a simple reality into an internal storm. Two individuals can face the same event, yet their experience of suffering can be profoundly different, not because the events themselves vary, but because their minds vary in their acceptance of what is. Consider the experience of losing a job. One person may respond with panic, anger, and self-recrimination, resisting the reality of unemployment and imagining a bleak, catastrophic future. The mind generates narratives of failure, worthlessness, and hopelessness, creating a mental suffering that feels almost independent of material circumstances. Another person may experience the same job loss as distressing, but maintains a perspective that acknowledges the difficulty without becoming overwhelmed. They recognize that a job loss is a change in circumstance, not an annihilation of identity or value, and they respond by adapting, seeking new opportunities, and allowing emotions to surface without judgment. The reality of the job loss is identical, but the presence or absence of resistance makes the difference between unbearable suffering and manageable challenge. Resistance often manifests as the desire for life to be different from what it is. It is the refusal to accept the present moment, the insistence that things should conform to personal expectations or desires. When reality violates these expectations, the mind reacts with frustration or anger. This reaction is so automatic that most people fail to recognize it. A traffic jam, an unexpected bill, a tense conversation, or a sudden illness. Any of these situations can trigger suffering. Yet the suffering is rarely caused by the event itself. It is caused by the mental commentary layered on top of the event, the insistence that reality should be otherwise. The traffic jam is an inconvenience, the bill is a responsibility, the illness is a physical condition. None of these are inherently unbearable. It is the refusal to accept them that transforms them into suffering. Resistance also appears as attachment to outcomes. Humans naturally desire certain experiences and fear others. We seek pleasure, comfort, love, success, and recognition, and we resist pain, discomfort, failure, rejection, and loss. Attachment and aversion are twin forces that shape much of human suffering. When outcomes align with desires, we may feel joy, yet even joy can be fleeting and precarious because it is dependent on conditions. When outcomes diverge from desire, the mind recoils, generating frustration, resentment, or despair. Life, however, is fundamentally unpredictable. Clinging to expectations is like trying to grasp water. The harder we hold, the more it slips through our fingers. The suffering arises not from the unpredictability itself, but from our refusal to meet life as it flows, our insistence that reality should behave according to our preferences. The principle that suffering comes from resistance rather than reality is supported by countless examples in daily life. Physical pain, for instance, is unavoidable at times. Injury, illness, and aging are realities that affect every human being. Yet those who resist these experiences with fear, denial, or anger magnify their suffering, whereas those who accept the experience of pain with awareness often find a degree of ease or peace even amid discomfort. Acceptance does not eliminate the physical sensation, but it reduces the secondary mental suffering, the worry, resentment, and imagined catastrophes that the mind attaches to the sensation. Similarly, emotional suffering such as grief, disappointment, or frustration becomes unbearable when resisted, but when acknowledged and felt without judgment, it often transforms into a more manageable, even insightful experience. Resistance is reinforced by stories we tell ourselves about what should be. These stories are the mental frameworks through which we interpret reality. A spouse's harsh words are not inherently devastating. Their impact is magnified when filtered through the narrative of personal inadequacy, betrayal, or injustice. A failed project is not inherently catastrophic. It is experienced as catastrophic when the mind insists that success is essential to self-worth. The stories we create in response to life events are often automatic, habitual, and largely unconscious, yet they shape our experience of suffering profoundly. By recognizing the stories, examining them, and loosening their hold, one can reduce the unnecessary suffering that comes from resisting reality. Resistance is often reinforced by fear. The mind fears loss, change, and the unknown. Fear leads to avoidance, denial, and attempts to control circumstances, all of which amplify suffering. Yet fear is itself a reaction to reality, as imagined rather than as it is. The future is unknown, yes, but resisting it through worry does not prevent challenges from occurring. It only makes the experience of challenges more painful. Acceptance of the present moment, by contrast, allows one to act with clarity, adaptability, and calmness, even amid uncertainty. Fear diminishes because the mind ceases to fight what is, and instead engages intelligently with what is happening. It is also important to understand that resistance is not always conscious. People often suffer without realizing why. A constant sense of dissatisfaction, irritability, or internal tension may be the product of subtle resistance to reality rather than external hardship. A person may complain about stress, yet the stress itself is a combination of external pressures and internal resistance. Awareness of resistance, the recognition that mental suffering is not always caused by events, but by the mind's reaction, is the first step toward liberation. By observing how the mind pushes against reality, clings to the past, or fears the future, one begins to understand the true source of suffering and opens the possibility of responding differently. Cultivating acceptance is not passive resignation. It is an active engagement with reality as it is, rather than as one wishes it to be. Acceptance allows the mind to operate without obstruction, to see clearly, and to act appropriately. In the midst of challenges, acceptance does not negate effort. It simply prevents additional suffering from being layered on top of difficulties through resistance. It allows one to respond with creativity, patience, and wisdom instead of reaction, judgment, or despair. Acceptance transforms ordinary difficulties into opportunities for growth and insight, because it removes the unnecessary suffering generated by fighting reality. One of the clearest illustrations of this principle is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness encourages observation of thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment or resistance. By noticing discomfort without immediately labeling it as bad, by observing fear without being consumed by it, and by acknowledging change without clinging to permanence, one can experience life more fully without the added weight of self-created suffering. Mindfulness is not about removing difficulty. It is about removing the mental struggle against it, which is often far heavier than the difficulty itself. The moment one stops resisting, the intensity of suffering diminishes, even if the circumstances themselves remain challenging. Human history and spiritual traditions have long recognized this principle. Many teachings emphasize that attachment, aversion, and denial are the root causes of suffering. These teachings do not claim that life is free from challenges, pain, or loss, but they highlight that the mind's resistance is the element that transforms difficulty into suffering. By practicing awareness, letting go of rigid expectations, and embracing the present as it is, one reduces the unnecessary suffering that arises from fighting life itself. Life becomes less a battle to control and more an experience to be navigated with clarity, resilience, and calmness. Resistance also limits the capacity for joy, fulfillment, and presence. When the mind is constantly fighting against what is, it cannot fully engage with what is beautiful, meaningful, or positive. Even in moments of pleasure or achievement, the tension of resistance creates undercurrents of anxiety, doubt, or dissatisfaction. By reducing resistance, by aligning perception with reality rather than expectation, the mind opens to richer experiences, more authentic connections, and a deeper sense of peace. Suffering, then, is not simply the pain or difficulty of life. It is the tension created when the mind refuses to inhabit life as it unfolds. The recognition that suffering comes from resistance rather than reality is empowering. It shifts the locus of control from external circumstances to the internal mind. It is not an invitation to passivity, but a call to self-awareness and conscious engagement. When one notices resistance, allows emotions to arise without judgment, and aligns with the flow of life as it is, the intensity of suffering diminishes. Challenges remain, discomfort remains, and change continues, yet the mind experiences these events with equanimity and insight rather than being overwhelmed by them. In this way, life becomes less a series of obstacles to endure and more a continuous unfolding in which clarity, presence, and understanding are cultivated. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, rigidity, or the denial of pleasure, yet in reality, discipline is the foundation of freedom. The paradox is simple but profound. The more a person cultivates control over their impulses, habits, and attention, the more capacity they have to act freely in life. Without discipline, the mind is scattered, the body is untrained, and choices are dictated by immediate desires whims, and external circumstances. With discipline, however, a person gains mastery over the self, allowing deliberate, conscious action that aligns with values, goals, and purpose. Freedom is not the absence of limits imposed externally, but the presence of internal order that enables genuine choice. Discipline, therefore, is not the enemy of freedom, it is its very source. From the earliest stages of life, discipline functions as a guiding structure that enables growth. A child who learns to brush their teeth, make their bed, or follow a simple schedule is not merely obeying rules. They are developing the capacity to act intentionally rather than react impulsively. Each small act of self-regulation builds neural pathways that strengthen focus, awareness, and consistency. Over time, these patterns accumulate into larger capacities, the ability to manage finances, maintain health, navigate relationships with integrity, and pursue long-term ambitions. Without this foundational discipline, life is subject to chance, desire, and circumstance, and freedom becomes illusory because choices are constrained by unexamined habits and reactive impulses. Discipline begins in the mind, where the battle between impulse and intention is most apparent. Every person experiences moments when immediate desires conflict with long-term goals, the urge to procrastinate instead of completing a task, to overindulge in comfort instead of exercising restraint, to react with anger instead of patience. These moments reveal the true nature of freedom. It is not the ability to act without constraint, but the ability to choose thoughtfully and act in alignment with purpose, even when it conflicts with fleeting impulses. The more a person trains the mind to respond deliberately rather than react automatically, the more freedom they cultivate. Discipline, therefore, is a skill that allows the mind to operate with clarity, focus, and deliberate intent, rather than being driven by instinct, emotion, or habit. In physical life, discipline manifests as mastery of the body. A person who trains their body through exercise, nutrition, or practice gains resilience, stamina, and coordination. These abilities expand the realm of what is possible, creating opportunities that would otherwise be inaccessible. An athlete, musician, or dancer, for example, can only perform at a high level through consistent practice and rigorous training. Each repetition, each small effort, is a form of discipline that gradually enlarges freedom, the freedom to perform, to express, and to create. Similarly, in everyday life, maintaining health and physical fitness is a form of discipline that creates freedom from illness, fatigue, or dependency, and freedom to pursue experiences with vitality and energy. The body becomes an instrument of choice rather than a source of limitation. Discipline also extends to time management and attention. Every individual is limited by the same 24 hours each day, yet the experience of time varies dramatically depending on how it is used. A person without discipline drifts from one distraction to another, allowing the clock to dictate their actions and the mind to be pulled by every passing impulse. They may experience a sense of busyness without productivity, stress without accomplishment, or wasted hours with lingering regret. In contrast, a disciplined individual structures time intentionally, prioritizes tasks, and cultivates focus. Time, once disciplined, becomes a medium of freedom, the ability to accomplish meaningful work, nurture relationships, develop skills, and create space for reflection and leisure. Discipline, in this sense, converts the finite nature of time from a source of pressure into a canvas for meaningful engagement. Emotional discipline is equally critical. Humans are wired to react strongly to stimuli. Criticism triggers defensiveness, setbacks trigger frustration, and desire triggers longing or impatience. Without discipline, emotions govern behavior, often leading to regret, conflict, or self-sabotage. With discipline, emotions become signals rather than masters. One can feel anger without harming others, feel sadness without being immobilized, and feel desire without being enslaved by it. Emotional discipline does not suppress feelings. It acknowledges them while choosing how to respond. The result is freedom from being ruled by fleeting states, freedom to act in alignment with values, and freedom to maintain equanimity even amid turmoil. Emotional discipline allows a person to navigate life with clarity, resilience, and integrity. Financial discipline is another domain in which freedom emerges through control. Without it, one becomes enslaved to impulse purchases, debt, and the stress of scarcity. With it, One builds resources, creates options, and gains security. Financial freedom is rarely achieved by sudden windfalls. It is cultivated through consistent, disciplined choices over time, saving, budgeting, investing, and planning for contingencies. Each act of restraint, each choice to delay gratification for a greater outcome, compounds into long-term freedom. This principle applies not only to money, but to any scarce resource, energy, attention, or opportunity. Discipline enables the careful management of these resources, creating the ability to act intentionally rather than being constrained by circumstance or reactive impulses. Discipline is closely tied to habit, and habit is a vehicle for freedom. Habits are repeated behaviors that occur automatically. They can either enslave or liberate. Bad habits, such as procrastination, overeating, excessive screen time, or impulsive behavior, create a subtle tyranny, constraining choices and limiting potential. Good habits, in contrast, free the individual by creating automatic structures that serve long-term goals. A disciplined approach to building positive habits, through small, consistent actions over time, creates a life in which beneficial behaviors occur effortlessly. This effortless alignment between action and intention is a form of freedom because it reduces internal friction and increases the capacity to pursue meaningful endeavors. Self-discipline also cultivates freedom by fostering independence from external circumstances and validation. A person who lacks discipline is vulnerable to influence, manipulation, and distraction because their choices are reactive rather than deliberate. They may seek approval, avoid discomfort, or follow trends without thought. A disciplined person, by contrast, is anchored internally, guided by principles, awareness, and purpose. They can navigate social pressures, setbacks, or criticism without losing equilibrium. Their freedom emerges from internal sovereignty, the ability to act according to judgment rather than impulse, to choose values over convenience, and to maintain consistency despite external turbulence. Discipline is not instant or effortless. It is cultivated gradually, often through small, repeated choices. Each act of restraint, focus, or adherence to principle strengthens the capacity for future freedom. The process can be challenging because the mind often resists consistency and the delay of gratification. Immediate pleasures are alluring, and the short-term payoff of indulgence often seems greater than the long-term benefit of restraint. Yet every conscious act of discipline builds resilience, clarity, and capacity. Over time, the accumulated effect is profound. A disciplined mind and body can navigate complexity, pursue ambitions, endure challenges, and respond creatively to opportunities. The more disciplined one becomes, the greater the latitude for choice, and the broader the horizon of possibility. Discipline also shapes character, which is another dimension of freedom. A person with integrity, patience, and consistency enjoys trust, respect, and credibility, which in turn creates social and professional freedom. Others naturally rely on them, opportunities open, and relationships deepen. Conversely, a lack of discipline often undermines trust, breeds inconsistency, and restricts options. The ability to act predictably, responsibly, and reliably is itself a freedom, because it allows one to engage with life fully without being hindered by the consequences of impulsive or uncontrolled behavior. In this sense, discipline is a currency of social, emotional, and professional liberty. In the realm of learning and mastery, discipline is the gateway to freedom of skill and knowledge. Any meaningful achievement, whether intellectual, artistic, physical, or professional, requires sustained effort, repetition, and focus. Talent alone is insufficient. Mastery is forged through disciplined practice. The freedom that emerges from mastery is multifaceted: freedom to create, freedom to perform at a high level, freedom to innovate, and freedom from dependency on others' expertise. A disciplined mind and body are equipped to explore possibilities that are inaccessible to those who lack consistent effort and control. This freedom is liberating because it expands the boundaries of potential, opening new avenues for creativity, influence, and self-expression. Spiritual and mental freedom is similarly grounded in discipline. The mind is a powerful tool, capable of generating anxiety, obsession, and suffering when left unchecked. Practices that cultivate mindfulness, reflection, meditation, or self-inquiry are forms of discipline that create space between impulse and action. In this space, choice emerges. Freedom is found in the ability to observe thoughts without attachment, to respond to life with intention rather than compulsion, and to remain steady amid the flux of external circumstances. Disciplined attention and self-awareness are the foundation of inner liberty, providing a stable center from which one can engage with the world creatively, compassionately, and effectively. The paradox of discipline is that while it may feel restrictive in the short term, it produces long-term freedom that far exceeds any temporary pleasure. Immediate gratification often offers the illusion of freedom, but it is fleeting, shallow, and dependent on circumstances. Discipline, by contrast, sacrifices short-term indulgence in favor of enduring capacity, resilience, and autonomy. Over time, this disciplined approach expands choices, increases adaptability, and allows life to be lived with intentionality, purpose, and agency. The person who masters discipline is not bound by habit, impulse, or circumstance. They are empowered to navigate life on their own terms, fully engaged, fully aware, and fully capable. Discipline creates freedom because it cultivates mastery over the very forces that would otherwise dominate life: the mind, the body, time, attention, emotion, habit, and desire. Each area of self-regulation amplifies the capacity for action and decision, making transforming limitation into opportunity. Without discipline, freedom is an illusion, for choices are dictated by reactive impulses, fleeting emotions, and external pressures. With discipline, freedom becomes real, grounded, and sustainable, allowing one to act with clarity, integrity, and purpose in every aspect of life. One of the most profound principles for living a peaceful and fulfilled life is the practice of detachment from what cannot be controlled. Human beings are naturally wired to desire control. From a young age, we learn that influence equals safety, predictability, and security. We strive to shape circumstances, steer outcomes, and anticipate events in order to feel confident that life will unfold according to our wishes. Yet the paradox of existence is that much of life lies beyond our control. People we care about, events in the external world, natural occurrences, and the passage of time all operate independently of our desires. The more energy we expend attempting to control these uncontrollable aspects, the greater our suffering. Detachment is not indifference or passivity. It is a deliberate choice to invest attention, effort, and emotion only where influence is possible, while releasing the anxiety, frustration, and resistance associated with the uncontrollable. From the simplest everyday experiences to the most significant life events, the limits of control are evident. A sudden traffic jam, a missed appointment, a change in weather, or a disagreement with a colleague are all external realities that cannot be commanded. Attempting to control them through frustration, worry, or blame only intensifies discomfort. Yet people often fall into the trap of believing that by resisting, complaining, or obsessively planning, they can bend reality to their will. This mental struggle consumes immense energy and produces unnecessary suffering because life, by its very nature, is fluid and unpredictable. Detachment involves acknowledging this truth and redirecting effort toward what can be influenced: one's own responses, choices, and attitude. In this shift, freedom emerges, and peace replaces the relentless tension created by trying to control the uncontrollable. Detachment does not mean disengagement from life or surrendering responsibility. It means clarity about what is within our power and what is not. Consider a situation in which someone is deeply concerned about the opinion of others. The actions, beliefs, and judgments of other people are inherently beyond one's control. Trying to manipulate their perceptions, seek constant approval, or defend one's image leads to stress, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. Detachment allows a person to focus instead on how they behave, the integrity of their actions, and the alignment of their choices with personal values. The opinions of others may remain unpredictable, but they no longer dictate internal stability or self-worth. By relinquishing the illusion of control over others' minds, one liberates immense mental and emotional energy. Detachment is also critical in relationships. Emotional attachment often manifests as a desire to control outcomes, influence behavior, or demand that others meet expectations. Romantic partners, friends, family members, and colleagues are frequently the source of frustration, not because of what they do, but because the mind resists their autonomy. Clinging to control in relationships creates tension, disappointment, and conflict, while detachment fosters acceptance, understanding, and harmony. Detachment does not mean disengaging from care, compassion, or commitment. Rather, it is the awareness that the other person's choices are their own, and that true influence arises not from force or coercion, but from example, presence, and patience. By releasing the need to control, relationships can deepen in authenticity, mutual respect, and trust. Life's major uncertainties, such as health loss or economic instability, further demonstrate the importance of detachment. Illness, accidents, or the sudden death of a loved one are realities that cannot be prevented entirely, no matter how cautious, vigilant, or proactive one may be. Resistance to these realities through denial, fear, or obsessive planning intensifies suffering. Accepting the limits of control does not imply passivity or despair. It allows one to respond with wisdom, preparation, and resilience. For instance, maintaining health through diet, exercise, and medical care is within one's influence, but becoming consumed by fear of every potential illness is not. Detachment allows proactive effort without mental enslavement to outcomes. Similarly, financial planning, career preparation, and risk management are areas where action is meaningful. But attempting to predict or control every variable creates stress rather than security. Detachment balances responsibility with realistic acceptance, creating mental freedom and emotional stability. The practice of detachment extends to mental and emotional life as well. Thoughts, emotions, and impulses are internal phenomena that arise spontaneously. Many people suffer not because of external circumstances, but because they cling to, resist, or identify with their own mental activity. Anxiety about the future, regret over the past, or resentment toward perceived injustice all involve attempts to control experiences that are unfolding beyond one's control. Detachment allows awareness to observe thoughts and emotions without becoming consumed by them. It does not suppress feelings or create numbness. It allows feelings to exist without defining identity or dictating action. In this space, the mind becomes flexible, calm, and clear, and the energy previously spent on resistance can be redirected toward constructive effort and genuine engagement with life. Detachment requires a shift in perspective. Most suffering arises from the expectation that life should conform to personal desires and timelines. When reality deviates from expectation, the mind reacts with tension, frustration, and resistance. By adopting the perspective that life unfolds according to its own rhythms, with forces beyond comprehension or control, one can approach experiences with openness, curiosity, and equanimity. This perspective is not fatalism, it is a pragmatic recognition of boundaries. Within these boundaries, one can act skillfully and decisively, yet without the added burden of attempting the impossible task of controlling every variable in life. The mind becomes lighter, the heart more resilient, and choices more effective. Practicing detachment is not a one-time realization, but an ongoing process. Human nature constantly tempts one to revert to the illusion of control. A slight delay in plans, an unexpected critique, or a sudden change in circumstances can trigger old patterns of resistance. Awareness of this tendency is crucial, as is the deliberate repetition of detachment as a conscious practice. Techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, journaling, and reflection reinforce the habit of observing without controlling. The mind gradually learns to release tension associated with the uncontrollable, reducing unnecessary suffering and fostering clarity, creativity, and responsiveness. Detachment also enhances resilience. Life is unpredictable, and even the most careful planning cannot eliminate adversity. The detached mind, however, does not collapse under unexpected challenges, because it is not bound to the illusion of total control. When faced with setbacks, the detached individual can respond strategically rather than emotionally, make rational decisions rather than panicked reactions, and preserve mental and emotional energy for what truly matters. Detachment does not remove the difficulty of challenges, but it removes the additional weight of resistance, creating the space for adaptability, problem solving, and constructive action. The benefits of detachment extend to personal growth and learning. When one is overly attached to specific outcomes, the mind resists failure, criticism, and discomfort, all of which are essential for development. Detachment allows one to experience feedback, mistakes, and challenges as opportunities rather than threats. By separating the self from rigid expectations and uncontrollable circumstances, one can act, reflect, and improve with clarity. Growth emerges naturally when the mind is not constrained by anxiety or fear, when energy is not wasted on resisting the inevitable, and when attention is devoted to actionable choices rather than imaginary control. Detachment also cultivates gratitude and presence. When the mind releases the burden of trying to control everything, it becomes free to notice and appreciate what already exists. The sun on the skin, the warmth of friendship, the taste of a simple meal, or the quiet rhythm of a day are often overlooked by those preoccupied with manipulation or expectation. Detachment brings awareness to these moments because attention is no longer scattered by futile efforts to control. It allows life to be experienced as it unfolds, in its raw richness and unpredictability. Gratitude emerges naturally in this state, as the mind recognizes the abundance that exists independent of personal demands or desires. Detachment is a practice that bridges acceptance and action. By recognizing what cannot be controlled, one avoids wasted energy, emotional turbulence, and mental distraction. By focusing on what can be influenced, the self, choices, habits, and effort, one maximizes effectiveness and agency. This alignment produces a form of freedom that is deeply empowering: the freedom to act without fear, the freedom to respond without reactivity, and the freedom to live with clarity, resilience, and joy. Detachment does not limit life, it expands the mind and heart, allowing a person to navigate existence with skill, patience, and grace. In essence, detachment transforms the relationship between the individual and the world. Instead of perceiving life as a battleground where every event must be controlled, the detached person sees reality as a flowing, interconnected process in which effort and acceptance coexist. Action becomes deliberate rather than frantic, observation becomes clear rather than clouded by desire, and the mind experiences calm amidst uncertainty. The ability to distinguish between what can and cannot be controlled is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence, mental stability, and enduring happiness. Those who cultivate this clarity discover that the mind no longer drifts into unnecessary turmoil and that life, in its unpredictable nature, can be embraced with courage, adaptability, and inner peace. Detachment also deepens empathy and compassion. When one recognizes the limits of personal control, it becomes easier to extend understanding to others who are similarly constrained. Judgments, resentment, and anger often arise from attempts to control others or to insist that life conform to expectations. By practicing detachment, one cultivates patience, tolerance, and perspective, recognizing that every person is navigating circumstances beyond their full control. Compassion flows naturally when the mind is no longer entangled in futile struggles for dominance or influence, creating harmonious relationships and a more peaceful environment. The practice of detachment ultimately transforms both perception and experience. Life is neither simplified nor free from challenge, but the mental and emotional burden imposed by the illusion of control is lifted. Each event, interaction, and circumstance can be faced with clarity, calm, and intentionality. The mind becomes a tool for observation, understanding, and deliberate action, rather than a slave to desire, fear, or expectation. Detachment frees attention, emotion, and energy from the unnecessary struggle against the uncontrollable, creating a life that is more vivid, responsive, and expansive in both experience and perspective. In a world filled with noise, distractions, and endless demands on attention, the pursuit of happiness often feels elusive. Many search for joy in external circumstances, success, relationships, material possessions, or experiences. Yet these sources are transient and often beyond one's control. True joy, however, is not something to be acquired from the outside, it is something to be discovered within. Silence and awareness are the gateways to this inner joy, providing the conditions in which the mind can settle, perception can sharpen, and the richness of life can be truly experienced. In silence, one is no longer overwhelmed by external input or mental chatter, and in awareness, one fully observes the present moment, allowing joy to arise naturally without dependency or effort. Silence is often misunderstood as emptiness or absence, but in reality, it is a presence, a space in which the mind can pause and perceive clearly. Modern life constantly bombards individuals with noise, the literal sounds of traffic, conversation, and media, as well as the figurative noise of thoughts, worries, plans, and judgments. This constant stimulation fragments attention and prevents deep engagement with life. When the mind is quiet, free from the incessant commentary of thought and the pull of distraction, one becomes receptive to subtle experiences that were previously unnoticed. The rustling of leaves, the rhythm of breath, the sensation of warmth on the skin, or the gentle rise and fall of the chest are not mere background. They are the texture of life itself. In silence, these ordinary phenomena become vivid, and the mind becomes attuned to the richness of existence, cultivating a foundation for joy that does not depend on external circumstances. Awareness complements silence by directing attention to what is happening in the present moment. Awareness is not intellectual analysis or judgment, it is direct observation, noticing life as it unfolds without interference. When one is aware, the mind observes sensations, thoughts, and emotions as they arise, without clinging, pushing away, or labeling them as good or bad. This practice of noticing allows one to see the transient nature of all experiences, and to recognize that happiness does not need to be manufactured. It is always present when the mind stops resisting reality. Awareness sharpens perception, revealing beauty, connection, and meaning in moments that would otherwise pass unnoticed. A simple breath, a smile, a ray of sunlight, or the sound of water becomes a source of delight when observed fully. The combination of silence and awareness transforms ordinary life into an experience of vivid presence and inner joy. The cultivation of silence and awareness requires deliberate effort in a culture that prizes constant action and stimulation. Many people equate silence with boredom or fear it as a reflection of emptiness. Yet the discomfort that arises in silence is often a mirror of the mind's habitual business. Thoughts, unresolved emotions, and anxiety surface when the usual distractions are removed. This is why many avoid solitude or quiet moments, preferring noise, entertainment, or mental engagement. The key to discovering joy through silence is to embrace this discomfort, observing it without resistance. When the mind no longer fights the presence of thoughts or feelings, it discovers that these phenomena are transient, and beneath them lies a steady, unshakable awareness capable of witnessing life without interference. This witnessing is fertile ground for joy, because it allows one to experience life in its fullness, unfiltered by judgment or attachment. Silence also reveals the subtleties of emotion. In the quiet mind, one can feel deeply without being overwhelmed. Joy, sadness, gratitude, and love are more vivid when the noise of distraction is removed. Awareness allows these emotions to be experienced fully, without clinging to the pleasant or rejecting the unpleasant. This full presence to emotion is paradoxically liberating. By allowing feelings to exist without resistance, one experiences a richness and depth that are inaccessible in habitual distraction. The mind becomes a receptive vessel, capable of savoring even the smallest moments of life, and the heart opens naturally to gratitude, wonder, and contentment. Joy is not contingent on the absence of difficulty. It arises from the capacity to be present and aware in every circumstance. The interplay of silence and awareness also fosters a deep connection to oneself. In the absence of external distraction, one becomes more intimately acquainted with inner life patterns of thought, habitual reactions, latent fears, and aspirations. Self-knowledge emerges not through analysis or striving, but through observing with gentle attention. This self-awareness allows one to recognize sources of unnecessary suffering, habitual reactivity, and misplaced desire. By observing these tendencies without judgment, the mind gradually loosens attachment to the noise of ego and expectation. The space created by this process allows joy to arise spontaneously, because it is no longer entangled with the mind's compulsions. True joy, in this sense, is a natural state of alignment with being, not a reward for achievement or acquisition. Silence and awareness also enhance perception of the external world. When the mind is quiet and attentive, ordinary experiences become extraordinary. A walk in nature, the sound of rainfall, the sight of a child playing, or the aroma of freshly baked bread gains vividness and depth. In the absence of distraction, one notices textures, colors, and sounds that would otherwise be overlooked. Awareness heightens sensitivity to subtle beauty and interconnectedness. This attention to the richness of life cultivates a sense of wonder and appreciation that is deeply nourishing to the soul. Joy emerges as a byproduct of perception itself, a direct recognition of life's inherent abundance, rather than an outcome dependent on external circumstances. The practice of silence and awareness is also transformative in relationships. When one is fully present with another person, listening without distraction, judgment, or anticipation, connections deepen. Conversations become more meaningful, empathy is enhanced, and mutual understanding grows. Most misunderstandings and conflicts arise from divided attention, habitual reactions, or attachment to outcomes. By cultivating silence within and awareness toward others, one engages in relationships with authenticity, patience, and compassion. Joy emerges in these moments because connection is not a transaction or a tool for validation. It is a genuine resonance between beings. The mind and heart become receptive to the richness of human interaction, finding satisfaction in presence rather than in expectation or control. Silence and awareness are also the foundations of creativity and insight. The mind needs space to explore, to imagine, and to discover. Constant distraction fragments attention and scatters mental energy, while quiet observation allows ideas, intuition, and inspiration to emerge organically. Artists, writers, scientists, and thinkers throughout history have relied on periods of stillness and mindfulness to access insight and creativity. When the mind is silent and aware, it can perceive connections and possibilities that are obscured by noise. This creative engagement with life is itself a source of joy, because it allows expression, exploration, and discovery to arise naturally from presence rather than from external reward or pressure. In daily life, cultivating silence and awareness can take many forms, from formal meditation to simple mindful moments. Pausing to observe the breath, noticing sensations during routine activities, or spending a few minutes in quiet reflection fosters the conditions for joy. Even brief intervals of awareness and stillness can create profound shifts in perception, reducing stress, increasing gratitude, and enhancing the quality of experience. The mind learns that joy is not in the pursuit of achievement or in acquiring external validation, but in the direct observation and appreciation of life itself. Small moments, when attended to fully, become sources of satisfaction, delight, and contentment. The practice of silence and awareness also strengthens resilience and equanimity. Life inevitably presents challenges, setbacks, and discomforts. The habitual mind often reacts with resistance, anxiety, or judgment, intensifying suffering and obscuring the capacity for joy. Silence allows one to step back from reactive patterns, while awareness provides clarity about what is happening and what can be influenced. Together, they create a mental space in which challenges can be faced without being overwhelmed. Joy, in this context, is not dependent on the absence of difficulty. It is the capacity to remain grounded, attentive, and receptive, even amid the fluctuations of life. A further aspect of silence and awareness is the cultivation of gratitude. The quiet mind, attentive to the present, notices gifts that are otherwise overlooked. The taste of food, the warmth of companionship, the laughter of children, or the simple act of breathing become sources of delight. Gratitude is a natural consequence of attentive observation, and joy emerges as an immediate experience rather than a distant goal. Awareness highlights abundance and sufficiency rather than scarcity and lack, and silence creates the inner space to perceive it. This form of joy is not fleeting. It is sustained by the mind's ability to remain present and receptive, unclouded by distraction or craving. Silence and awareness are also intimately connected to the understanding of impermanence. By observing life quietly and attentively, one notices the transient nature of all phenomena, sensations, thoughts, emotions, and external events. Awareness of impermanence reduces attachment, worry, and fear, because it clarifies that everything is in constant flux. Joy emerges naturally when the mind releases the illusion of permanence, when it stops clinging to fleeting experiences or fearing change. This insight transforms life from a source of struggle into a continuous flow of experience, in which the richness of each moment can be appreciated fully. Ultimately, silence and awareness create a profound alignment between the inner and outer worlds. The quiet mind, attentive and observant, becomes a lens through which life can be experienced with clarity, depth, and presence. Joy is revealed not as an acquisition or achievement, but as a natural byproduct of living fully in the moment. The noise of distraction, the pull of desire, and the turbulence of habitual thought all fade when attention rests in awareness and the mind embraces silence. Life becomes vivid, textured, and immediate. The heart perceives abundance, connection, and beauty, and the mind experiences clarity, calm, and equanimity. In this state, joy is no longer dependent on external circumstances. It is discovered as the innate quality of being fully present, fully attentive, and fully alive. Happiness is often misunderstood as a condition that is dependent on external circumstances, as if it is something to be obtained, earned, or discovered only when life aligns perfectly with our desires. Many believe that happiness will arrive when they achieve a promotion, acquire wealth, find the perfect relationship, or live in ideal circumstances. Yet time and experience repeatedly show that these external conditions are neither stable nor sufficient to guarantee enduring happiness. People who appear to have everything they desire may still feel unfulfilled, anxious, or empty, while others who face significant challenges can live with profound contentment. This paradox points to a crucial insight: happiness is not a passive state triggered by external factors. It is an active skill, cultivated through practice, intention, and awareness. It is a capacity of the mind and heart, a habit of perception and response, and a discipline that can be trained like any other. Understanding happiness as a skill requires recognizing that the mind is the primary determinant of experience. The thoughts we nurture, the attention we give, and the interpretations we assign to events shape our perception of life. Two individuals may face the same situation, yet one experiences joy, while the other experiences frustration, anxiety, or despair. The difference lies not in circumstance, but in mental and emotional habits. Cultivating happiness as a skill involves learning to notice these habits, understanding their influence, and deliberately shaping them to foster well-being. It requires practice in recognizing negative patterns, responding with intentionality rather than reactivity, and creating mental space for positive states of being to emerge naturally. One of the central aspects of this skill is mindfulness, the ability to observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. Mindfulness allows one to recognize that emotions are transient, mental narratives are often distorted, and external events do not dictate inner states. By cultivating the ability to witness experience without clinging to pleasure or resisting discomfort, individuals learn to maintain a sense of equilibrium and joy that is independent of circumstance. This practice does not eliminate challenges, pain, or loss, but it transforms the relationship to them, reducing the suffering and negative mental amplification that often accompany life's difficulties. Happiness, in this sense, is not the absence of difficulty. It is the capacity to remain anchored and aware amidst life as it unfolds. Another key element of happiness as a skill is gratitude. Gratitude is not merely a polite acknowledgement or superficial optimism. It is a deliberate practice of recognizing the value and abundance present in life, even in ordinary or difficult moments. When cultivated consistently, gratitude rewires the mind to focus on what is present rather than what is lacking. It shifts attention from scarcity to sufficiency, from complaint to appreciation. This shift in perspective is a skill that can be trained through reflection, journaling, meditation, or simple conscious noticing. Over time, it creates a stable foundation for happiness that does not depend on external achievement or circumstance, but arises from the cultivation of a perceptual lens that highlights life's richness. The practice of self-compassion is also fundamental to happiness as a skill. People often tie their sense of joy to success, perfection, or approval, and when these conditions are unmet, they experience dissatisfaction or self-criticism. Self-compassion interrupts this cycle by fostering a kind, understanding, and patient relationship with oneself. It allows individuals to accept limitations, mistakes, and vulnerabilities without self-condemnation. This practice strengthens resilience, reduces emotional turbulence, and cultivates an inner environment conducive to joy. By responding to oneself with care and understanding, happiness becomes less dependent on external validation or achievement and more rooted in a consistent, reliable source within. Happiness as a skill also involves the deliberate cultivation of perspective. Life inevitably includes setbacks, losses, and challenges, and without the ability to interpret these events constructively, suffering dominates experience. Perspective allows one to view difficulties as temporary, contextual, and often instructive. It transforms obstacles into opportunities for learning, growth, and self-discovery. By practicing reframing, reflection, An intentional evaluation of events, individuals develop the skill of responding to life with equanimity, finding meaning and even joy in situations that might otherwise provoke distress. Perspective is not denial or avoidance. It is the conscious choice to interpret reality in ways that foster well-being, and like any skill, it improves with repeated practice and mindful application. The cultivation of habits and routines is another dimension of happiness as a skill. Just as physical fitness requires consistent exercise, mental and emotional fitness requires repeated engagement in practices that foster contentment, focus, and joy. This may include meditation, journaling, exercise, acts of kindness, creative expression, or reflection on values and purpose. These routines train the mind to prioritize meaningful engagement, manage stress, and respond constructively to challenges. Over time, consistent practice develops automatic patterns of thought and behavior that support happiness, reducing reliance on external circumstances and strengthening internal resources. The skill lies not in performing these actions mechanically, but in integrating them consciously and consistently into daily life so that they become a habitual foundation for well-being. Emotional regulation is another critical skill that underpins happiness. Emotions arise spontaneously in response to both internal and external stimuli, and without training, they often dictate behavior, leading to impulsive reactions, regret, or suffering. By developing the ability to observe, understand, and modulate emotions, individuals gain the capacity to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. Emotional regulation does not suppress feeling. Rather, it allows one to experience emotions fully while maintaining awareness and choice. This skill fosters stability, resilience, and the capacity to maintain joy even in the presence of difficulties, because emotional states no longer dominate or dictate one's experience. Happiness becomes a cultivated equilibrium, a result of conscious skill rather than circumstance. Relationships also provide a fertile context for practicing happiness as a skill. People often seek happiness through connection, approval, or attention from others, but these sources are inherently unpredictable. By cultivating skills in empathy, active listening, compassion, and effective communication, individuals create meaningful interactions that enhance both their own well-being and that of others. Happiness emerges naturally when relationships are approached with presence, care, and understanding, rather than dependence or control. The skill lies in nurturing connection intentionally, cultivating harmony and mutual growth, and recognizing that while external events in relationships are beyond complete control, one's responses, attention, and presence are entirely within one's influence. Detachment from outcomes is another essential aspect of happiness as a skill. Many individuals tie joy to the achievement of goals or the acquisition of desired results. This attachment creates vulnerability to disappointment, frustration, and anxiety when outcomes do not align with expectation. By practicing detachment, maintaining effort and engagement while releasing rigid expectations, individuals preserve equanimity and sustain joy irrespective of circumstances. Detachment allows for focused action without mental enslavement to results, transforming the pursuit of goals into an opportunity for growth and fulfillment rather than a conditional source of happiness. The skill lies in balancing intention, effort, and acceptance, and developing the capacity to find satisfaction in the process itself rather than in its outcomes. Happiness as a skill also benefits from awareness of impermanence. Life is inherently dynamic, and all experiences, whether pleasurable or painful, are temporary. Awareness of impermanence allows one to appreciate positive moments more fully and to approach challenges with perspective and composure. This awareness nurtures resilience, reduces attachment and resistance, and strengthens the capacity to maintain joy even amidst change or loss. By cultivating the skill of observing impermanence, individuals learn to navigate the fluctuations of life with equanimity, transforming challenges into opportunities for insight and maintaining a stable foundation of well-being. The practice of presence is intimately connected to happiness as a skill. Being fully attentive and engaged in the current moment allows one to experience life directly, rather than through the lens of past regrets or future anxieties. Presence enables the observation of subtle details, the appreciation of ordinary pleasures, and the engagement with people, tasks, and sensations in their fullness. Cultivating presence is a deliberate skill, reinforced through mindfulness, reflection, and conscious attention. Over time, it trains the mind to focus on the richness of experience itself, producing a reliable source of joy that is independent of external conditions. Happiness becomes a matter of perception, awareness, and engagement, rather than circumstance or possession. Generosity and service to others also enhance the cultivation of happiness. Acts of kindness, empathy, and support create a feedback loop, in which the giver experiences satisfaction and fulfillment, independent of external reward. By consciously practicing generosity and compassion, individuals develop the skill of deriving joy from connection and contribution rather than acquisition or personal gain. This orientation nurtures perspective, reduces self-centeredness, and fosters a sense of purpose, all of which strengthen the internal foundations of happiness. Like other aspects of this skill, it requires deliberate, repeated practice and conscious cultivation over time. The neurological and psychological sciences provide further support for the understanding of happiness as a skill. Studies in positive psychology demonstrate that while genetic and circumstantial factors influence baseline well-being, deliberate practices such as mindfulness, gratitude, self-compassion, and prosocial behavior significantly enhance life satisfaction and emotional resilience. Happiness is not fixed or dependent solely on circumstance. It is cultivated through repeated, intentional mental and emotional training. The brain, through neuroplasticity, can strengthen pathways associated with positive perception, emotional regulation, and awareness, making joy more accessible and sustainable. This scientific perspective reinforces the principle that happiness is a skill that can be learned, refined, and strengthened through conscious effort and practice. Ultimately, understanding happiness as a skill shifts the locus of control from external events to internal cultivation. It empowers individuals to take responsibility for their well-being, to invest in practices that reliably produce joy, and to navigate life with resilience and insight. Circumstances may fluctuate, relationships may challenge, and events may surprise, but the skill of happiness allows the mind to maintain equilibrium, appreciation, and engagement. It is not a passive state granted by fortune. It is an active capacity, honed through awareness, practice, reflection, and intentional action. By developing this skill, one discovers that joy is not something to be found, but something to be practiced, refined, and embodied in every moment of life.